Confidence? Well, it all starts with the tools at your fingertips. CMI creates workplaces full of inspiring leaders. With its on-demand resources, network of mentors and industry-leading accreditations. Search CMI Confidence today.
This session is recorded and will be available on the CMI website and YouTube channel. Join the conversation by using the live chat box for your questions and comments. We'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Leadership Unveiled, the Impact of Toxic Leadership on Achieving Results digital event, hosted by the CMI Northern Ireland Board. My name is Natasha and I'm an events coordinator at the CMI, and I will shortly be handing over to Olivia Hamill to begin today's event. If you have any questions during the digital event, you can ask them using the live chat box on the right hand of your screen, and we shall answer as many as we can during the Q&A. Today's session is being recorded and will be shared with you later today for those who book to attend. The event recording will also be available on the CMI website and the CMI YouTube channel. Now over to Olivia Hamill, Events Lead of the CMI Northern Ireland Board, to begin the event.
Hello and welcome to the Northern Ireland webinar, on toxic leadership. I am so delighted that you could be here to join us today to talk about this very sensitive and hard topic, but we need to start talking about it, this other side of leadership. We are so lucky today to have Lisa Bradley from the Queen's Business School, and also Stephen Lazar from the main network. And just so glad to have you here today. Quick wave, say hello, both of you. So we've been chatting online. So first of all, we'll have Lisa, then we'll hand over to Steve. But just to say hello to everybody, make sure to kind of write some comments in the comment section, ask us questions. That we want it to be interactive, we want it to be engaging. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to hand over to Lisa now, who's going to set the scene about toxic leadership. Thank you so much, and let's get started.
Thank you, Natasha, and thank you, Olivia. And when I had the opportunity to speak about toxic leadership, I jumped at the opportunity for two main reasons. The first one is that I do believe that if you want to be better, you have to embrace all sides of leadership, the good and the bad. But also from a sporting background myself, you only get better by tackling the stuff that you're actually not very good at. So it's very easy to practice and to train at the techniques and the tools that you like. It's in your groove, it feels good, and you could feel very positive from that experience. But actually, to get better, you got to pick up all your weaknesses and you got to work at that. So this is sort of my little brief introduction to how we might deal and look at the impact of toxic leadership. Thank you so much to CMI Northern Ireland for the support. But of course, I have my friend Bluey. So hopefully you're aware of Bluey and the family. If you're not aware of Bluey, find yourself a child and convince them to get you to speak to you about Bluey. Because I thought that when it comes to toxic environments, the one that we're all having in common is some sort of family, whatever that looks like, and Bluey, I think, has changed the world from, my brother used to talk about two eras of man, before the internet and after the internet. And I think we now have the era before Bluey and after Bluey, where we're able to talk from a young age about lots of different issues. So just to move on to tell you a little bit about myself. So some of you will know me already. I'm from a sporting background, and I'm a coach in British wrestling and British judo. And I have twice World Masters champion. I have two kids. You see them up there, Connor and Eli. I've officiated at things like the Commonwealth Games and in London 2012, but most people know me for my silver medal at the Commonwealth Games in Manchester 2002. In terms of leadership, the hardest event I ever had to do was one you can see on the right there, which was in Japan, the World Championships. Essentially, when I got there, just finished my PhD, just looking for a change of scene, and where best but to go to Japan, to the home of judo, to be part of an event. It turns out that because of language difficulties, they didn't have anyone to run the event. They did have a tournament director, but in Japan, that's an honorary role. And I was approached, essentially got off the plane, taken for a coffee and told, would you run this event? So you're dealing with very, very different cultures. And anyone who understands Japan knows that even as a black belt, women have a white stripe through their black belt because women black belts aren't considered to be equal to male black belts, hence the white novice line through that. So toxic leadership, one of the questions that had come in was like, what are the top 3 ways of identifying toxic leadership? So the first one, how do we know? So if we look over with a little bit of help of Bluey. So if we go to the next slide, you can see there that, this is a lovely picture of where someone is sitting in the boss's chair. I'm in charge. I'm the boss now. And that, when you look at this environment, it just looks like a normal sort of cartoon environment. But look at the staff, look at the team. You can see that the boss is very happy and proud in their privileged position. But look at the team around them. And one of the first ways of identifying if you're in an environment where you have toxic leadership is not the leader themselves, but how people respond within that bigger environment. How motivated do they look here? How enthused do they look? Are they going to do the job? Are they going to do it in a positive way? Are they happy to come forward with solutions? And if you look around and you feel that you feel that you don't see that within your environment, that's your first indication that you have a problem. So quite often people focus on the person they perceive as being toxic, but the real evidence of that is that wider culture. We talk about almost this, how you make someone feel when you're not in their presence. So when you leave work, do you feel different when you leave work and go to the gym? Do you feel different when you leave work and go to and go home and see your family? And if there's a big difference there, there's a chances are that there is tolerated a level of toxic leadership everywhere. Other ways of identifying that, if we look to the next slide, is what I call a micromanaging maniac. So this is where you have someone who is over all the detail, but in a way that your hands feel tied, in a way that you don't actually believe that you can have that responsibility to make a difference and to get change. Every element, like trying to work with someone looking over your shoulder. The problem with micromanaging is around decision-making. So there are 2 types of decision-making. So if I were to ask you, how many decisions have you made today already? You've made thousands. Probably the most important one was getting up, because that's actually a decision. It's so easy to not get up because our chimp brains are telling us, stay where you are, stay here in the safe and warm. But what to wear, what to eat, what travel way to go, and will you check your emails, how you respond to people. So you're making decisions all the time. But then there's the strategic decisions. These are the ones that are much more important and we should be taking much more of our time upon. So the most important strategic decision you've made today is to join us here for this incredible session and look at some personal development and be part of the conversation about managing toxic leadership. So when you're someone who's micromanaging, not only are they not getting the best out of every one of their individual team members because they're being constrained and they're fitting the mold rather than bringing their skills that you employed them for to the event. But also that time means that you're not doing the strategically important decisions. So if you find that you're in an environment that you feel like you're being micromanaged, then chances are that environment is not going to be a good place to work on, because that company is not going to move to another level that's going to provide the opportunities and the pathways for development for your success. So another way of moving on, to the next slide, there is another way of identifying when you have toxic leadership is the credit hog, as we call them. These are the people that turn up when things are going well. These are the people that ensure they're in every photograph. They ensure that when a release goes out, a press release, they're named and given credit for that particular work. And again, this is the most frustrating thing. If people believe that their efforts are not going to be rewarded either financially or in recognition, it's actually much more important than what the job title is or where they work. Because once you're in an environment where you recognize that there are people that when things are tough, they blame other people, they, when something goes wrong, who do I blame for this? Not how do we fix this as a team? But the most upsetting thing is when things are going well or when there's a success, suddenly they appear and can appear to be very credible as having led this work or led that change. And even we can see that if those are the people that get promoted, if you see that these people are getting promoted, then that's a sign that the senior management are not good at recognizing those that talk a good game from those that play a good game. So it's making sure that we get those people who are productive, who make the difference on the ground to be able to be recognized for their work. often most of our best people are humble. They don't want the credit. They're not putting themselves out there. And so you have to catch people doing well. You have to catch people doing a good job. And if you find you're in an environment that doesn't happen, then again, that's another evidence of toxic leadership. Last sort of one in terms of my top three, if we move on, is the mood swing maestro. I remember my PhD supervisor saying, it doesn't matter what sort of person you are or what sort of environment you're in. What really matters is consistency. So how people are in a consistent way shows you that they're essentially a good leader, because it's not possible to be happy all the time. It's not possible to be down all the time. But what you do know is working with those people is, if you're thinking, I wonder what mood they're going to be in today, then you're likely dealing with a toxic leader. If you have that thing where you look in the door and you look to see, what's their response like? Are they coming in with a smile on their face? Or, are you judging the environment before you're even meeting that person? That's actually requiring an effort on your behalf. And that's, again, another sign that you're dealing with someone who's a toxic leader. That idea of you're just people that speak to you one day and then ignore you the next day. That really is the most upsetting thing as a person, because when you have that idea of not knowing how someone's going to respond to you, or you feel you need to modify your behaviors because of how they're going to be on that particular day, that's extremely draining and is not going to lead you to be your best you. So moving on from the top tips of identifying someone, I'm going to throw this out there now. Maybe you're the toxic leader. So you're probably now going, what are we talking about here? Because, if you come along to this event to learn, that's actually the number one sign that you're not a toxic leader, because you've given up time to learn about this aspect and to see what you can do about it. So that's the number one sign that you're not. But what I'm talking about is the leader that affects you the most is yourself. So what people don't realize is leadership is actually based a lot on how you deal with the external environment, rather than how the external environment deals with yourself. So one of the things you have to recognize is it actually you that's toxic? So if we move on to the next slide, are you this person? Are you this person that's, hiding away from what's happening, not able to take credit for the work that you've done, finding it difficult to build good teams? And it might be the case that the issues that you're dealing with are actually created by yourself. And I know that a number of managers that I've worked with, is when I was able to get them to reframe the situation, they could suddenly deal with staff that were maybe displaying bullying behaviors towards them and react in a completely different way. And I do a lot of self-defense training, and self-defense training, it's about not being the victim. And that's a simple thing, is how do you walk? How do you present yourself? Are you presenting yourself in a way that you're able to be the best you and are less affected by the negativity around you? It may be the case that I'm always conscious of the company I keep. I take the company of people that I feel better with after I've spent time with them. Now, does that mean I don't speak to people who are complaining or having a problem or going through a very difficult time? Of course not. But the problem shared is a problem to have. So my time with that person means that I actually feel better as a consequence of it, because I know I've helped that person, even though it's a very difficult situation. So when you start to feel that, choose that company, because those people will drain every ounce of positivity that you have for themselves, and in the end up, you're the one that ends up empty. To really deal with that, then, and the next slide there is, you got to look at how to manage stress. Okay, you got to have that safe space. You got to have someone that, it's not about them providing you with solutions. It's not about them helping you deal with it, but it's about having a space that you can share who you are. And in sport terms, we call this to chimp off to. So quite often when someone's in chimp mood, so they're just complaining about something, and then they talk themselves into the solution, but they've needed someone to allow that to say out loud rather than keeping it all within themselves. Because sometimes just by talking to yourself and having questions like, what might you do about that? How's that making you feel? What could we do differently in future? Then suddenly you're able to manage those emotions. And I love this Bluey and Bingo. Bingo's the younger sister of Bluey, where you just sort of create yourself a tent, create a little area that you can start to be yourself and start to feel safe and be less toxic and lead that change. And I say that the last one, the next slide there, is just as I mentioned, that idea of how do you manage stress? You got to find a way to have a release. So, is it about doing sports? Is it about getting the hockey stick out, and just having a go, or going for a run, or playing some games? Is it, about doing a bit of cooking, or, watching TV, your favorite sport, the team that you follow? And my favorite one, the bottom right, which probably looks like me the most of the time, is I tend to go from full on to nothing. So, sometimes you just have to crash. Sometimes you just have to say, do you know what? I'm not going to look at my emails. I'm just going to crash, and I'm going to get a good sleep, and I'm going to come up, and I'm going to refrain, because regardless of the situation, you are still you. Thank you so much for coming along today. I could talk about this for a very long period of time, so I'm going to jump over to Steve, who's going to follow up with, now you've identified it, you've recognized it in yourself, and he's going to follow up now with a little bit more of the strategy. So one of the things I put up is, what do we have in common? Both ex-international athletes. So I've got the bat, and I'm going to pass the ball to yourself there, Steve. Catch it. There we go. You can start whenever you're ready. Thanks, everyone.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Yes, thank you, Natasha, for putting that up. Lisa, you were absolutely brilliant, and congratulations on your illustrious career within the sports and even now in the education sector. And what you touched upon is an absolute spot on in terms of how to recognize the people from credit hogs and mood swing maestros, and you see all these kind of narrative common personalities within the team. Look, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually present my presentation. It's a bit traditional, it's a bit more information heavy. It's a little bit of a death by presentation kind of approach, but I'll tell you why I would actually go down that route now. It's just a little bit of positioning before you understand what I'm going to actually suggest. I have founded this organization called EMEAN, which is nothing but a Center for Ethnic Minority Economic Empowerment. It was established in 2021. It promotes economic activity, employment, and entrepreneurship. We have a reach of 15,000 ethnic minority professionals living in Northern Ireland, and it's growing every day. And this is one of the points that comes in line with this conversation, is we have about 60 plus ethnicities engaging with us, and we have about 7 verticals. And the heart behind the organization is to contribute to the economic development of this country. So that's the heart. Next slide, please. Yes, we are working with all the 11 councils across Northern Ireland, all the universities, enterprises, employment initiatives. So the collaboration is key for us, and these are all live collaborations that is happening at the moment, and it's just not thrown because they collaborated with us few years ago. It's happening at the moment live. So just to set the context up, next slide, please. I can't. This is good. Look, just a bit tell about myself. I can't see anything there, so it's okay. So I don't know what has happened. Okay. Myself, I have worked in 8 different countries. I've worked in sports sector, community sector, corporate sector, civil sector, and I have worked in 40 different communities with 30 different schools, 35 different schools across Northern Ireland. And I picked up experiences working with all these different sectors, different communities, working with different nationalities. And one of the reasons why I say this is because for the last 20 years, I've specialized in not going into any. Thank you so much. Hopefully, I've actually. Yes. What I did was I have my specialization was for the last 20 years not to take leadership positions, because I really, really wanted to actually spend time on the ground to find out what is really happening on the ground. What is happening really in the middle management. So I got into a study mode, and only in the last 2 or 3 years, I just launched myself. I said, you know what? I would like to be in that leadership position. So that was the heart behind why I stayed so long on the grassroots. So next slide, please. Yes, Emin, as I said to you, has got around 60 plus nationalities. So what we are dealing with is Emin is almost like United Nations of Northern Ireland, because we have people from diverse ethnicity, diverse personalities, diverse ideologies. There are, diverse management styles they come from. The communications are different. Leadership styles are different. Their school of thoughts, values, so they all are coming from different parts of the world with all these diverse thinking. It's almost like a melting pot, and it does take a lot of leadership to understand where they're coming from. And there are sometimes, why I put this slide is because there's sometimes people are coming from their own perspective, from their own diverse thinking, because of their own nationality based influences. What happens is the interpretation of what they're trying to say, or the way they're saying, could be actually misconstrued sometimes as toxic, or sometimes it is toxic. It's quite a nuanced kind of conversation that we need to keep on having within our organization. So that's why I put this, so that there is a context that you understand that we're dealing with a lot of nationalities. I'm sure there are a lot of people here who have a workforce that they engage with the different ethnicities, different people from different parts of the world who have come into the UK and Northern Ireland. And just I wanted to throw this out, And next slide, Natasha. Yes. Look, from a toxic leadership point of view, what I wanted to talk was the toxic tendencies of a manager, because what I do believe is um, uh, any manager or a leader is fully not toxic, but may have toxic tendencies for various reasons. And very rarely I see a leader who is that high threshold of toxic a person. That person is is operating at a high toxic level. Usually there is tendencies, there are parts of that leadership of a particular person who's got the toxic kind of element to them. So one of the things I have seen is over the years, when you see toxicity sort of in demonstration, usually it's sometimes personality type imbalance. People do not understand what kind of personality they are and how they need to project themselves. What are the blind spot they have about their personalities? You need to understand all that. So it's almost like self-reflection. The second one is usually when you sort of sit and observe. I'm usually a kind of person, I would sit back and observe rather than going into a solution mode. You will see that they're usually nurtured in a toxic environment. They're a product of that toxic environment. And the next level, when you go, because they come from the toxic environment, the leadership is not celebrating each other's achievement and success and all that kind of toxic environment. What happens is the ideology of what is in it for me and only me kind of mentality starts dominating in that particular leader or in that particular manager. So you can actually see now there are sort of other kind of powers working under the layer why that person is behaving the way that person is behaving. So there's some level of empathy I wanted to bring into this conversation, and then because of nurtured into a toxic nurtured through a toxic environment, that person obviously has got a lack of higher calling. It's all about going for the lowest hanging fruit approach. Where can I get a credit hog moment where I can get a picture? There's no higher calling in terms of, okay, what do I want to do in life? What kind of legacy I want to leave? What kind of impact can I make before I leave this particular position? And usually when you go one step underneath, you will see there's a lot of unmet needs. And now people must be thinking, what kind of unmet needs could that be? The basic answer I can actually, example I can give is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That particular thing speaks everything. And if you go into a toxic leader's life, you will see that there is somewhere some needs have not been met. So hopefully this makes sense how I'm actually trying to decode the toxic leader and a manager. So next slide, please. Oh, that's yes. So usual common traits of a toxic leader where I have seen, regardless of whichever nationality, whichever background they come from, uh, 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 these are the common traits I have seen. Is while they are actually achieving their goals, they have a lot of people as casualties. They really have a lot of people in a very bad shape. That is one of the common traits I've seen of a toxic leader. They want to get to that place and they want to push, shove, draw blood, kill, destroy everybody and just get there. That's kind of one of the traits. And the second one is they're never curious. They're never curious to learn or inquire. They're not like, I have seen that, what do you mean? Or tell me about it. I'm really interested. Those kind of interests are not there. And obviously, they the toxic leaders usually they're all into me, myself, and I mentality. It's all about me, all about me, all about me. And another thing I have seen in a toxic leader is they never acknowledge uh, contributors publicly. They do not do it. They actually are very strategic about places where they don't actually acknowledge that person was part of this particular project's success, or that, because it is innately a sort of a credit hog mentality, as Lisa said. And also another thing is the glory hunters. They wait for every damn thing to put themselves out there to say, I am here, look at me, give me a bit of a sun, sort of light upon me. I've done this, and they almost sit in most of these kind of environments. They can get a glory out of that. So, and also this is a huge one for me is what Lisa touched is the mood swing maestros. So they're petty, they employ anger, they have a shortness of spirit. And because of that particular thing, what happens is they lack nuanced thinking. You can't actually talk to them about gray matter. You always have to speak in white and black. They just don't want to try and understand, but they want a result. So yeah, these are the traits I have seen, regardless of any background they come from. So you can actually look out for this. Next slide, please. Natasha, next slide. Yes, practical tips in dealing with toxic people. So the first thing I would say is for entry level and middle management, it's a very sticky situation whenever people are in that space. They're working under a boss and they know that there is a certain level of power in the position to actually bring them up through the ranks or give them a sort of reference for the next job or something. You want to keep that relationship going. So what I would say is initially when you see all this toxicity being demonstrated, being outplayed, keep quiet, observe, don't get involved in it unless you're directly affected by it. Just look, observe, and do not try to outsmart your toxic manager, because that manager is going to come back at you 2 times harder. So first is basically try and observe. When I showed you the iceberg of the toxic managers, what is at play? Do they have these kind of attributes? What do they have? Those kind of unmet needs? Do they struggle with self-assurance, self-esteem, and all that kind of thing? And then make sure that you actually put things in place, like be very clear with your communications. For example, if your manager or leader is saying, oh, I want this thing to be done, make sure you say, oh, when are you expecting? What is the deadline? Establish what is expected. Ask them what is that you really want, and ask them for clear targets. And another thing is always double check with emails. because that is something I always say. Because if a leader or a manager is changing tunes, changing goalposts, emails is a very good way of actually tracking that back and say, look, you said this is what I am moving towards. Because what happens is, if by a verbal conversation, it just goes everywhere, and it doesn't, you can't actually repeat it back, or don't know, everything is gone out in the air. So that's what if there is a disrespectful behavior, what I would say is, there are many people, they say go and speak first. I would not use it. I would actually write a very informal email saying that, look, I did not like it. This is something I've just, I'm feeling myself. So that is something I would actually say first email before the start of the conversation, because there's a trail there, if the disrespect is going too much. And also, when you're talking to anyone who is going to actually get aggressive, use all kind of techniques to actually blame, have a third person who's a witness, who's a neutral figure there, who can actually say, okay, I heard this. And also, when you're actually doing this exercise, be objective in your thinking, be factual and less emotive. Because I'm not saying do not be emotive, be less emotive, be objective, because that is what is going to actually get the conversation moving forward. My only thing about this particular strategy is keep professionally developing and keep networking. For example, take CMI trainings, all the accreditations that is there, and keep developing, because they cannot stop you from doing this, whichever bosses you're actually working under. And the next thing is, next slide, please. Yes. Yes. So basically, this is a sort of a cycle that I actually have developed for myself. The first, what has happened over here is, the first thing is, what I would say is, spot the behavior. Now that you know what are the key things that you can look for from what Lisa has spotted and what I have spotted. Study the person. Study the person and say, look, okay, why is this person actually, I'm not saying go into a psychological, like, sort of full, trying to do a full kind of personality profiling of your boss or anything, but study the person. Why you will actually find some ways to actually work with that person. That's why I'm saying. And address it constructively. Address it constructively. And I said first email, then go and speak with another person if things can be misconstrued. And the fourth step is wait for change. Because human beings sometimes most of the times have the ability to change. Not every toxic leader is toxic because they want to be toxic. Sometimes it is because they have this blindness about their leadership qualities. And believe me, I have so many blindness to my leadership, and I'm still improving, I'm still reflective, I'm just trying to reflect. And if the change does not happen, exit, because you're wasting your time in that space. Just exit, get out of that place. And the best way to get out of that place is, see this at the middle, what I've put is professional development and networking is what you need to be doing, because no manager, no leader can stop you from doing an external professional development and external networking. Because once you build that network, you will know that you will be a hotcake to move into another space, and you're professionally developing. Nobody can stop you from that. That is the biggest exit strategy I give. Next slide, please. Yes. So these are the strategies I thought would be useful to share, because it has worked for me. And I also do some consulting work and for individuals and as well as organizations, and also speaking to managers and stuff like that over the years. So, but my one thing from a toxic leader's empathy point of view is, human beings have the ability to change positively. So let's take an approach to deal with toxic attributes of a manager or a leader from a view that they can change, they can really become good allies to your professional development. But if it does not happen, you have to exit. So that is what my feedback would be. Hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you so much, Lisa. My head is like boom with all the ideas and all the new knowledge and all the new knowledge gained. So absolutely fantastic. Just first of all, to kind of before we get into the questions, I just want to say thank you so much for everybody who's joined us today. We have people from Germany. We have people from the US. We also have a few from Lisbon. Hello, Emma. Hello, Claire. And also we have Bristol. I'm naming. I always do a few shout outs to everybody so that they know. And Malaysia. There we go. Istanbul. So you can see everybody's popping up on the screen at this minute in time.
Do we get invites to all these people?
Yeah, we need invites. Yes. Can we come in person to see
Please.
you? And don't forget to, if you have any more want to engage in the conversation later on, don't forget to like our Northern Ireland LinkedIn board. There you go, Steve. You'll be happy I did a wee plug there for you. So first of all, that's Steve Negger, I should say, in the board, not board Steve Lazard this minute in time. So just first of all, the poll, I wanted to recognize the fact is why are people here today? And 40% of people wanted to say, or are here today, said how to manage a toxic leader. And also 39% said both how to manage a toxic leader and also recognizing toxicity in myself. So that is pretty, key information there. So let's go on to some of the questions. I'm really, really excited to hear. And there's lots of thanks going on in the chat. So I'm looking at this minute in time. So the first question I'd like to ask you both, and you can both think about it, is are there any cultural factors which contribute to prevalence of toxic behaviour?
Go
Lisa,
ahead,
do you want to?
Steve,
to start.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve. You have a good insight into this with your network.
No, you are also, because you're director of the educational institution, and there is a lot of students from that different ethnicity. You're equally a very important voice, Lisa. Yes, look, from a cultural point of view, the first thing that comes into my mind is there's a lot of misunderstanding. There's a lot of misunderstanding, which is misconstrued as toxic. Okay. For example, I said body language, there are some body languages do come across offensive in some different cultures, and what that needs to happen is there needs to be some level of conversation that needs to happen. How does that look like in that particular demography or in that particular place? And the cultural 100% plays a huge part. And then I'll also say this. There are, the word cultural word, when I take from an ethnicity point of view, there's a good side to cultures, and there is bad side to cultures, and there is ugly side to cultures. Okay. So we have to openly, honestly, and say that we cannot adopt every culture, the entirety of every culture in every context. Okay. There are certain things we can take and we can actually celebrate, and there are certain things which say this is not happening. So in that point of view, that conversation, if it's a multinational company with multi-ethnic workforce, or multi-ethnic student background, that conversation, if it not has happened, then what happens is toxic environment starts to emerge, and people are a lot of misunderstandings. So there should be somebody who is placed as a catalyst. Like I would play a catalyst role in terms of trying to get people around and say, hey, you know what? Let's try to understand each other rather than throwing stones at each other,
Sure, I always say that there are two things that people don't like. One is things they don't understand, and two, more work. So when you're dealing in a work environment, chances are this person is assigning you work, so you're already in a negative state of mind. And then their behaviors is something that you don't understand or may clash with your own. And then that leads to someone, this is the internal toxic leadership that we would talk about. And really, I know a lot of people talking about training. In my work, I have to do lots of training. And what I can tell you is whenever that comes up for renewal, my attitude is, oh, I have to do that training. So I don't talk about training, I talk about education. So education can be from events like this, from just choosing to speak to people. People don't mind. In fact, people are often very happy to talk about their cultures and their backgrounds and be open and have those conversations. There's a very small amount of people that are actually toxic as a people, as a person, instead of toxic in their behaviors. They're learning as well. I was pleased to see someone noting that no one ends up in a leadership role because when they were born and someone asked them, what do you want to do when you grow up? And they said, I want to be a leader. Chances are most people have ended up in those positions for lots of reasons. And therefore we can all help and grow together. And often, again, that fear of, I don't understand, that complex about being found out as not being good enough. So often people can cover that with the other behaviors. And that's really where the wider culture comes in, and being supportive. If it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to raise good ideas, it's okay to not be on form every day. And once you start changing that environment, you will actually be more productive as a company.
I think it's really interesting when you said, like, you know, Lisa, when you talked about like moods, and you know, it's okay to say the fact is you're going to have an off day. And I think it's making that within a team, within a work environment, that not everybody's going to have a happy clappy face on all the time. But it's the fact is, how do you create that environment to allow people just to say,
which is honest, which is different from what I'd said around, do you judge what a person's mood is before you speak to them? Because if you're having to take that step, then that's a sign that you're dealing with toxicity, because that's different, because you know that how you'll be treated will be affected by that. And that's a key difference.
It shouldn't be managed by this. Perfect. I have a really interesting comment / question from Susan Young. So she has a question saying, how can you stop toxic leaders from taking ideas as their own? Because she said, I tried to discuss this with my manager, that it was unfair taking ideas from others, and I was told to more or less back off.
So let me flip this a little bit, okay? So what I will tell you is, one of the most creative and innovative countries in the entire world is the United Kingdom, in relation to number of patents per population, in relation to development of new ideas, in terms of being first to the table. But tell me this, which countries are the most productive? The most productive countries in the world aren't the ones with the best ideas. It's the ones that take an idea and actually run with that and convert that into productivity. I actually pride myself in many meetings where I go in thinking, how am I going to make them think that this is their idea so I can get them to do it? As opposed to, you know, so I want them to take my ideas essentially and run with them. So it's reframing that towards, no one gets credit for having an idea. The credit actually comes from the delivery of that. And that's where you need to start reframing what you reward, what you recognize as a company, what you talk about in yourself, being a voice in a meeting, supporting other people within a meeting and speaking up. And that's, I think, what people struggle with toxic leaders that are toxic people. They will dominate the conversation and won't allow that conversation to flow. But once you recognize that there's one of them and there's 20 or 30 of you, and you start to work together to make that change and to recognize and support each other, it can massively turn that situation around. So differentiate between having a good idea, which anybody can have, to being a person who makes change happen. And that's what essentially leads to the productivity change in the long run.
Dave, can you add anything else to that? What's your insights to that?
See, the question is quite general, because I don't know the context that Suzanne Young is at the moment. But what I can say is this: in a real world, when you're working under a boss, especially as a number 2 or number 3, you know, when you how long has Sandra really worked for? If she's worked for quite a long time, then she must be seriously sort of frustrated. If she's worked at a very short time with that particular leader, probably your it might come across really long. Probably your role is to make that leader look good. Probably your role is to actually feed ideas to that leader so that idea can be actually executed, and probably that leader will end up actually acknowledging you over a period of time, because you become that idea engine of ideas for your boss. Because there are sometimes that is the role also we have to play for a while in a real world, when you're actually working under different bosses, different I don't like the word boss, different leaders or different managers. So there's a place where there's a place and a time when it comes that this person is not acknowledging, and that becomes a real place and a time. That is the time where Suzanne has to decide and say, you know what, I'm going to move, because this is not happening for a long time. But usually there will be leaders who will eventually start saying, hey, you know what, this idea came from Suzanne. And for that, probably you may have to wait if you have started your journey with that leader just recently. So hopefully that nuanced answer is a bit more practical, so I don't know.
And I have another question for you about can having been in a toxic environment be a good experience? That's for you, Steve.
Can having been in a toxic, not at all. So not at all. But what I would say is, see, the entire employment ecosystem is grappling with this. Okay, it is a commercially competitive space we all are on, because whether we like to agree or not, we actually go into an organization which has got hierarchies, where people are actually competing for places and are actually trying to move themselves in the vertically up. So there are, I would say, not every, unless the organization is really bad, where the toxicity is actually being rolled out in every sphere of their outworking of their organization, then it's really, really bad to be in that place. Otherwise, if there are certain parts are actually demonstrating this kind of toxicity, I do think you can navigate and you can protect yourself, and I think you can actually develop yourself. And you know what, certain level of these kind of toxic spaces actually equip you to be smart and savvy, and as well as get all the understanding of how to deal with things, because it does actually add value to your leadership quality, believe me. Because in that pressure, diamonds are made under pressure. It's the pressure, sometimes it's negative pressure, which is a toxic pressure, sometimes it's a positive pressure, which is like deadlines and all these kind of things. So I wouldn't actually I will say no, but there are in some context, yes.
What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about sport, because the most toxic environments I've been in are the sporting environments, when you're working with Olympic teams and you're working with Commonwealth teams and you're dealing with one-shot opportunities that don't appear again, politics, you're dealing with performance that can't be measured numerically. They have been the most toxic, high-pressured environments. And certainly I wouldn't describe them as a good experience, but I love learning. My favorite thing to do is learn, and I have learned so much from that. So when people take on leadership positions, they often think about the role models and the people that they aspire to. But when you ask them their behaviors, they will have learned more from a bad leader than from a good one, because they will say, I will not do that. I will not make that person feel small. I will not miss the opportunity to promote others. And they've learned a lot from that environment. But really, for me, it's about leading the change. And that's where mindset is so important, because the toxicity is not the environment. The toxicity is something in the environment that can be controlled, that can be managed, and ultimately either out of that environment or the environment moves on. Because people who are good don't stay in an environment where they're not being appreciated. So if you want to hold on to your best people, you need to look at changing the culture. You hired them because they're bringing something to the table that you don't have. So then if you don't listen to that and you don't take that insight, you're not actually moving on through your company, through your industry, or even personally through your connections as well. So for me, it's I've when I reflect on who I am today as a person, a lot of who I am has come out as a consequence. And people say to me, how are you so positive all the time? And I say, well, one, I'm not positive all the time, but when you've been in really bad environments, you appreciate normal as being amazing. So so having gone through, and definitely sport gave me that.
Yes.
It's really there's support from Michelle Ross has said the worst toxic managers I've had have shown me exactly how not to do it and shown me how to be a better leader and manager. So there are some positives to toxic leaders. Susan Young has said thank you. She's for the feedback. Another one, thank you for the advice in terms of toxic environments. I'm just going to read out some of the comments for 1 wee second, folks, because there's so many comments. It's so engaging and everybody's interactive. And I'm so sorry I can't get round to everybody's question, but we'll try our best over the next 10 minutes to answer them. So bear with us. So thank you so much. Keep on asking them. I'd say that Rhonda Jones says, it's for me or them is a question I have wrestled with. Having a critical friend who is impartial helps with talking out loud and figuring that out. Do you think having a critical friend is really important to kind of not be a toxic leader and also manage a toxic leader, manage that situation?
Yeah, well, basically, again, this comes from from my background in sports psychology, where you have what I call your chimp brain, or and then you have your human brain. So your human brain is you, and your chimp brain is what you're born with, like the color of your eyes. It's a bit like having a pet. If your pet comes in and destroys the next door's garden, you can't say that wasn't me, that was my dog, right? So you have a responsibility to look after and manage that particular environment. So the worst environment to be in is two chimps. So when you've two chimps chimping off each other, this is where you end up in the most negative situation, because things are said that aren't meant. Hurt happens that, yes, you may be able to move on from it. You break the jar, you can fix the jar, but the jar will never be what it was before. And so therefore, having been able to recognize when someone's in chimp mode as opposed to in human mode, and providing that opportunity to just to express that, so that's getting that toxicity out of themselves, is really important. So just recognizing, is someone chimping off where they need just that space and has to be safe, or is someone actually a toxic person and they're deliberately manipulating you and the environment and the situation? So that critical friend, and when I used to run a lot of competitions, international competitions, there used to always be two of us, and it's like it was either good cop, bad cop, or it was for now one of us. If one of us was cracking up, the other one could come in and go, I'll just maybe take a leave with this person. So people would always come up, what am I on? When am I on? Who am I competing with? What grade are they? Are they better than me? How long have they been doing judo? And, eventually it's like, well, I could get it done if you would stop asking me questions. And then you say to someone, I need 5 minutes. And then they say, just wanted to know where the toilet was. And then your heart breaks because they haven't been, you've taken it out on the wrong person. So having that and building that network, and this is what I mean about I choose my company really carefully. And if I have if they have a negative reflection on me after I spend my time with them, I reflect on that and I say that time was not good use of my time. And I change that. And that's something where having that friend and recognizing when you need to chimp off and say, look, I'm just going to chimp off now. So it's not you, I just need to. And one of the reasons I picked that picture in the tent was that the two people are sitting side by side. If you're going to chimp off or you're going to be a critical friend, don't sit opposite someone. Don't look them in the eyes. That's the worst thing you can do, because then you're in a conflict situation and you get chimp on chimp. Being with someone, i.e. your presence. So my daughter, she has ADHD. She needs to body double. So quite often, if she's got a big task to do, I just come in, I just sit there and play Angry Birds on the phone or whatever I'm going to do, because she just needs someone there. She doesn't necessarily need me to help her, but without me, she's saying, I've just been sitting here looking at the screen and I've been doing absolutely nothing because I just needed someone to keep me honest. So it's not so much a critical friend. It's about having a network of good people and allowing each people to have bad days, to allow each people to have a difficult client, that they're trying to deal with, and having that environment where you can talk about those. And again, this is where leadership comes in, because that has to be created. That's not something that happens organically.
Dave, what about you? Do you have anything about that? Was amazing, Lisa. Thank you so much. In terms of having a critical friend, do you have a critical friend? What
Look, Lisa, that was amazing what you
Hello.
actually said about the chimp side of things. And you know what? I just pulled out from my diary, from my library. I have a book here, which is chimp.
Yes.
No,
Yeah,
I can't.
Professor State Peters,
Tim
so one of my
Carter.
heroes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
and
I'm a
then
big Mario Sullivan fan, so
Yeah.
and the second one is also this. Can you see it?
yeah, well,
No,
just about move it back a bit.
move it back a bit too.
There we go.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh
there,
yes.
There we go. Yeah.
yeah.
That
Perfect.
one. Okay. And another one is this, which Lisa has been talking about. Very
I
good.
should say other books are available.
Lots of other bits are available.
Yes.
It's the same concept around recognizing when it's the element that you were born with. And that's why all children are in chimp mode. So when they say I hate you, they do hate you at that moment in time, but they don't hate you generally. And so you don't react to chimp mode. And I say as people mature, and this is where education and learning about other cultures and being with people that aren't your normal, that's a learning that has to be done deliberately. And many of the issues that we have are people that have never done the learning, so they haven't developed their human brain enough, and still very much relying on their chimp brain.
So, what do you think?
I think see, having a quality friends, quality network it's actually hard, because there are a lot of people do not actually sit at a place of solution mode most of the times, or idea mode. What I would say, a critic, you need to create a very good nurturing environment for yourself. One of my critic friend to myself is books, and also some of the things, podcasts that I can hear. And I have one or two friends, who I can go and say, okay, can we critique this situation from 10 different points of views? What do you think? So I have a couple of geeky friends who actually sit with, and they are specifically for deep dive conversations, and they are into that deep diving kind of, they're wired for deep diving conversations. So they're not like, and I have certain friends who I go and they're totally switched off. They're like, Steve, come on, let's have fun here. So I do believe those kind of deep dive conversation friends, if you have, then what happens is you can actually sort of decode and dissect into all these kind of nuanced situation you're dealing with under toxic leaders and toxic environments, and whether you can change from the within, or is it the exit, or whether do you have to have certain steps that you need to take in order to thrive in that particular situation. And also a good friend will always make you self-reflect, and books are usually a very good way. They're non-judgmental, because when you read, they're actually speaking, you're reading text. So it's actually really good. I have a few friends, but I also use books and as well as a podcast to reflect on myself. So those are
I
the
love
three
the way
things.
Steve's like, I have friends. I do have friends. Imagine my friends. Right.
Yeah.
We have 3 minutes left, and I'm going to be really greedy and ask one more question, but you have to answer it in 2 sentences, each of you, right? Okay. And I think it's really, really important to think as we're thinking about the future, thinking about. So, Jamie's question, the last one, you have to answer it really quickly, both of you, as you're told off now. Do you have any suggestions as a new leader coming into a toxic environment, trying to change the air with an existing team that is customized to a toxic work behavior become the norm?
A couple of things. You have to remove the elephants from the room. So basically, toxic people make the balls for other people to fire. So often when you go in, you look around and you're often looking in the wrong place. You're looking at the person who's been get jizzed up by someone else in relation to that. So you have to just deal with them one at a time and take it out of the environment. Be open, be honest and transparent, be consistent with your decision making. I do want to address a very quick one on there. Recruitment, it's so important. I will never recruit someone that speaks negatively about their previous employer or their previous job, because if they're prepared to do that in an environment to you, thinking they have insight, they're going to do the same about your company outside. So to me, that's one, the red flag. And two, I always ask them, how do you deal with a toxic person? And if it's all about them and how amazing they are and how they sorted that, then those are red flags. So I using my minute well there.
Well done, Steve. What about you?
I think it depends upon the size of that particular environment. If it's a really big environment, it's like trying to turn a big ship around. It will take time, and if you are in the race, then you can win the race. So you take time, you study, you build a strategy, you work with the leaders who might be having toxic tendencies, and change. If it's a smaller one, well, again, you have to actually play the long game. Just wait it out. Just be there. There are some people who can achieve those kind of a change. It can definitely happen, but you have to actually make sure that that you will not get the vertical sort of sense of moving in terms of in any way quite fast, But if
And
you're
build your own coaching team. Get the
yes,
people to be your coach.
Right.
yes,
We'll have to continue this conversation another time. Look, folks, thank you first of all to our fabulous guest speakers, Steve and Lisa. I'm going to give you a clap, and everybody else give you a virtual clap.
well done, Lisa. Well done.
This time.
And thank you so much for everybody joining us today. We're slightly over time by maybe 30 seconds, but we're okay. Thank you so much. If you would like another webinar with the same people to continue the conversation, let us know in the comments, because if we have enough comments, we'll get it organized again and we'll get Lisa and Steve to come back. But you need a comment, you need to let us know. And thank you so much for Natasha for everything that you have done. Natasha's on this side of my square.
Thanks,
So
Natasha.
Brilliant, very
Thanks, everyone. I hope you all have a great day. And for those on the other side of the world, have a great night.
Yes.
So that is it for today's session. Thank you to everyone who joined us. Thank you, Olivia, Steve, and Lisa, for your insights and expertise. Don't forget, if you're a CMI member, you can log in to Management Direct using the link in the live chat, and you can find a wide range of exclusive and practical development resources and much more. And if you're not yet a member or subscriber, you can join our community also using the link in the live chat with our special discount code to gain full access to our Management Direct portal. Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Thank
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't forget, as a CMI member, you can find the latest management and leadership insights at managers.org.uk. If you're not yet a member, join our community to discover CMI Confidence with on-demand resources, our network of mentors, and industry-leading accreditations.